Sheila, you've seen, I'm sure, like everyone else, all the conversations lately about families being broken up and things like that. The just the horror of dividing a family. Um, what would you say if somebody said, how do how could do you think cannabis or arrest for weed possession have broken up families? How would you respond to that question or statement or that issue?
Well, the shooter for Brooklyn would be like, hell yeah, to be perfectly honest. But the corporate person in me is like, obviously, that has been the case. We can't even put a number, right, on just the amount of despair that has happened since we began legally or prohibited prohibition against marijuana. It has really shaped the way our inner cities look right now, removing a large number of males from the home. I was actually in Oklahoma. Do that.
What would you say?
I do mentor and definitely talk about it. My bread and butter primarily are with special interest groups that are already existing in the industry, special interest groups, nonprofit organizations, and established brands. But over the last year, I've spent quite a bit of time really speaking to Black and Brown folks about the cannabis industry, just because I'm from Brooklyn and I feel like it's crazy that I walk in and I'm the only Afro in the spot. I definitely am, really encouraging people who are like myself, corporate to cannabis crossovers, to get into the industry. And I try to, do that through mentorship and also speaking and writing about it at various mainstream outlets. It has really shaped the way our inner cities look right now, removing a large number of males from the home. I was actually in Oklahoma a few months ago as they're preparing for a vote on June 26th. So just tomorrow, they're voting on legalization. And there are a couple of neighborhoods where 80% of the homes, Black neighborhoods, 80% of the homes have both parents missing from the home due to marijuana incarceration. Oklahoma having.
Wait, oh, stop, stop. You made me rude. I don't even, I've never cut somebody off like that before. Did you just tell me that there are neighborhoods where 80% of both parents have
Yes.
been taken out of the home because they were arrested for weed possession?
Yes. Oklahoma
Oh,
has some of
are
the
you
harsh.
serious?
Yes,
You're kidding me?
I'm not.
Please,
I'm
go ahead,
not.
start talking. I'm in a cussing. So I'm gonna mute myself. You tell the rest of it. I didn't.
It's
No,
for
I
me.
didn't know
I'm
you was
not
gonna
trying to
say
get
this.
you hyped so much, but that's why we should be fired up. That's why I've gotten more fired up. I entered the industry as a disenfranchised patient, and then I started to see just how imbalanced this was. I started to get more irate myself and felt like we needed to really be out there. We worked with the former Senator Connie Johnson, who is one of the candidates for governor. Would be the first African American governor of Oklahoma. She was our keynote speaker for an event that we did in Oklahoma, and the stories that she can tell us about her constituency are crazy. Oklahoma has some of the harshest laws on cannabis possession, not even distribution, just possession. You can get up to 2 years in jail just based on being found with a certain amount. And so, yeah, there are neighborhoods where 80% of the homes are really being run by grandparents at this point, children being raised by grandparents, rather, because both parents are missing. I know I grew up in East New York, Brooklyn, used to be the murder capital of the country at some point in the 80s. And I mean, I'm sure that drug, sales in general were the cause for a lot of homes being broken up and relationships no longer existing, and people not having fathers, and that was a common story. I was told to say no on drugs, say no to drugs, and I did. And now that I've fast forward nearly 20 years since high school graduation, I have a degree in molecular biology, have gone to medical school, dropped out, went to business school. I now am like on an epiphany that this has been something that has sort of been in some ways, propaganda designed by the government to prevent us from fighting back in many different ways for our own health and wellness. And I can talk about that at length, but definitely social justice, because it was a real tool in incarceration over the last 40 years, for sure.
You don't just Rashida. You just fucked up
It's
my
a wake up call. I'm sorry. I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
You messed up my whole day. I've been yelling about this divided families issue for a whole week, and I didn't even know that. But the idea that people can be all up in arms about what's going on with with people coming across the border, which feel however you want about that, I'm one way or the other, but yet they completely ignore what marijuana possession alone has done to black people. And this is not some illegal substance across the board. This is not crack. This is not heroin. It's nowhere close, right? I mean, opioids. We know what opioids have done to people. Weed, the evidence seems to show, does not have that same kind of effect on any level. It's not even in the same. Shouldn't even be in the same category. So anyway, let's go back. Sorry, I lost the camera. See, I'm so mad. I'm slamming stuff.
Yeah.
I really was mad. I wasn't mad. I'm literally processing this, because it's fascinating to me that that this is happening. I mean, it's there's very few situations where you really get to see how deeply embedded white supremacy is. Because if this were happening to anyone else, they wouldn't allow it to happen. If it were happening to white folks, they wouldn't let it happen. If it were happening to immigrants, they clearly wouldn't allow it to happen. They wouldn't let immigrants stay in separate buildings from their parents, right? You know what I mean? Like they wouldn't even let them get separated when they're going across the border. So the idea that they can just know this is going on with black families and just say, well, it's business as usual. This is America. This is what we do. I think is something that we should be concerned about. But anyway, let me get out of my feelings and move forward here. Recently, there were some developments, and everybody I'm talking to, Dashida Dawson, she's the CEO of MJM Strategy, which is the first minority-owned consulting firm, strategic consulting firm in the cannabis industry. And she knows a whole lot of stuff about a whole lot of stuff. Also, I want to remind everybody, make sure you hit the like button, share button, subscribe button, hit lots of buttons when we're talking if you're on social media, because that's how people know about these important conversations. It's certainly better than that crap y'all was watching on the BET Awards. Y'all know y'all was watching. Anyway, I'm playing. I'm being a hater right now.
I saw your post.
Some recent developments in cannabis in the industry in Canada. Can you kind of speak to what's been going on in Canada?
Yes. So, we've known for a while that Canada's had a pretty large national medical marijuana program, and I think it started in around 2016, really towards the middle of 2017, this rumor about them legalizing. And last week, Tuesday, it finally came to pass that, adult use marijuana legalization happened in Canada. And that's huge because it's just north of the United States. As is already, there are a number of people kind of shifting their revenue, shifting their resources to be able to support a Canadian marijuana market. They have a public, their market is public in terms of marijuana being able to be, I guess, on the stock exchange there versus here, you can't touch the plant. It actually puts them in a great position right now to really capitalize on this green rush. I'm surprised the United States is kind of willing to sit idly by while Canada is doing it. But in the meantime, there are a number of us in the industry that are recognizing that this also means we have again, a short window that we can work on to really get a foothold in the industry before things really start to change in the United States, and being able to capitalize, potentially make money in Canada. Or investing in companies doing business in Canada, you want to make sure that they're also following this letter to a T, letter law to the T. They also prohibit promotion, packaging, and any labeling of cannabis products that look like they could be appealing to young persons. Of course, as a person who comes from brand marketing, consumer marketing background, it's kind of like, well, what does that mean these days, right? But so it feels a little subjective. But I think when they're talking about cartoon characters, things that you've historically seen in the stoner world, bubble letters, that type of stuff. Fortunately, there's not a lot of branding happening in Canada. They are a country that really is not as defined on the brands as the United States is. So everything's been very clean and very far from that. Although you still see some of those, for the culture publications and maybe events that have the bubble smoke letters and the stereotypical stoner cartoon character feel. But more or less, most people have been moving away from that.